Now.
All right, thank you for joining us. My name is Kini Allen. I'm a romance reader and reviewer and a fierce advocate for the romance genre, and I'm so pleased to be here tonight with two amazing authors, Tracey Livesay and Mia Sosa. So thank you so much to the team at One More Page for putting this panel together. So I'll do a little intro and then we'll just chat a little bit and then we'll open it up to questions. So Tracey's newest release, Like Lovers Do, is a friends to lovers story set against the romantic backdrop of Martha's Vineyard. It's the second book in her popular Girls Trip series from Avon. These novels feature a group of women who met and formed a lifelong bond during their first year of college and based on her real life annual trips with her best friends. In addition to winning the 2020 Emma Award for Best Interracial Romance, she's been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, Entertainment Weekly, and on CBS This Morning. A graduate of the University of Virginia and the University of Virginia Law School, and a former criminal defense attorney, Tracey lives in Virginia with her husband, who she met on the very first day of law school, and their 3 children. When not answering the call of wife, mother, or author, she watches planner videos on YouTube and daydreams about her next designer purse purchase. So thank you for joining us, Tracey.
You're welcome. I'm sorry, guys.
That's right. And then we have USA Today bestselling author Mia Sosa, who writes funny, flirty, and moderately steamy contemporary romances that celebrate our multicultural world. Her books have received praise and recognition from Kirkus Reviews, Library Journal, Publishers Weekly, the Oprah Magazine, The Washington Post, BuzzFeed, Entertainment Weekly, and more. Book Riot included her debut, Unbuttoning the CEO, in its list of 100 must-read romantic comedies, and Booklist recently called her the new go-to author for fans of sassy and sexy contemporary romances. Before embarking on a writing career, Mia practiced First Amendment and media law in the nation's capital. Now she spends her days plotting stories and procrastinating on Twitter. I know about that. Mia lives in Maryland with her husband, their 2 bookaholic daughters, and 1 dog that rules them all. So awesome. I love both your bios. I've read The Worst Best Man, and Tracey, I just recently finished Like Lovers Do. Both of them are fantastic and will be ending up on my list of favorites for 2020. So thank you. So first, I just want to know, how did your journey as a romance reader start?
Who wants to go first? Tracey?
You can't. I was looking at you. I was like, yes, Mia, how did your journey start? So as a reader. Okay. So I have always been a reader. My dad used to read to me when I was little. We used to have, I'm totally dating myself, the Childcraft set of books. And number 2 was Stories and Fables. I know that book inside and out. He used to read it to me all the time. And then as I got older, I read any and everything that I could get my hands on. And of course, my favorites were like Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, Sweet Valley High, like all of those types of books, totally sort of into it. And so I was about 12 years old, and my parents owned and ran a seafood restaurant. And every day after school, I would have to, take the bus to this restaurant and get off work for my $35 a week that I got in $1 bill so I could be rich. And I would get off and go to work. And there was a girl, I guess, who worked there as a waitress sometimes. And I always had my head in the books. Whenever I wasn't doing whatever I was supposed to do, I was reading books. And she, one day, just sort of like, we were standing at the bar, and she just sort of slid this book down to me. And she was like, "You really should read this." And I was like, "Oh, what is it? And it was, I can't remember the title. I wish I could, but it was a silhouette romance. And it was the white with the purple border. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I picked it up and started reading. I was like, okay. And then it got to like good stuff with like nipples, kisses. And I was just like, what is this madness? And where can I get more? And I mean, I was 12. And that was literally like it for me. I found those books wherever I could, usually at like flea markets. You could get like 4 for $1. And I had $35. And I would take my backpack and fill it up and go home and read. I read everywhere. I read in school. I read in church when I was supposed to usher. Like, I was that kid. And it pretty much never stopped. So that's how I came to reading romance. I actually dedicated the first book I got published to the woman who gave me the first romance novel I ever read, because she literally changed my life.
That's so awesome. How about you, Mia? How did you start reading romance?
Okay, so I in fact have this somewhere on my website. I can't remember the first romance book I read. I very clearly can see in my head, I think the line is Harlequin Presents, because it's all white with the circle and the couple in the circle. I can definitely see that in my head. And my mother was not a romance reader, and so I definitely didn't get access from her. But I'm almost certain that it was from the library in our neighborhood, where I would go either after school or during the summer. I grew up in East Harlem. Like, we pretty quickly figured out that the library was air conditioned and we would go there and cool off. And so that would be the place where we would hang out. And I'm almost certain that's when I picked up my first romance. And from there, I had them all the time. Like, I mean, at 16, 17, I know if I had any money, it was to buy a romance novel. So
that's awesome.
That's how I started.
So how did you transition from reading romance to writing romance?
So I'll take this one first.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like
yeah, go ahead.
So I practiced law in DC for about 10 years. And during that time, I continued to be a romance reader. And I would every so often use my laptop, not just for my work, but for like playing with the idea of writing a romance. It wasn't anything real. It was just, I'll just write a story. None of these stories had plots. I didn't know where they were going. I just knew there were two people that were going to somehow get together. But I remember later in my career, very clearly being in Minnesota, and I was stuck in Minnesota because of a snowstorm. I had just finished working on a case. It settled. So there was absolutely nothing on my plate, because when you're working on a case that's about to go to trial, you basically clear your plate. So I had nothing else to do because the case had settled. And I was also stuck in Minnesota because of a snowstorm, not in Minnesota, but actually in Washington, D.C. It was a huge snowstorm several years ago. And at some point I knew to figure out what year that was. But I was stuck in Minnesota for, I think, an extra 3 days. That's how backed up it was to get back to the East Coast. And so I started writing, really started writing. And I think that was the first time, kind of, one, being frustrated with the fact that I couldn't get home and missing my family a whole lot. And then thinking, well, maybe there's something else I can do with my life, which is something that a lot of lawyers turned romance writers do, which is they have that moment like, is this it? Which is why I think, romance landia is inundated with lawyers. But I had that moment many times. And I didn't really think that I was going to do anything with it. But when I started to think about the possibility of making this a career, I thought, why not? Like, I should try it. And I thought it was going to be really hard, and it is really hard. And kudos to all of the romance writers who do this every day, because it's not an easy job. But the difference now is that when I was practicing, I was up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and everybody in the house was sleeping, and I was miserable. Now I'm still up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Tracey knows this. And I am working on books, and I am absolutely not miserable. And in fact, I actually am upset with my body that I have to go to sleep. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep my eyes open anymore, but I still want to, because I'm living in this world and I'm absolutely enjoying what I'm doing. And that, I think, is a huge difference. And it tells me that I made the right choice, just in terms of doing something that I ultimately love.
So Allie is asking just quickly, was it Snowmageddon or Snowpocalypse?
It was. We had to figure out what it was. Okay, so I think I can figure this out.
Joy thinks it was Snowmageddon.
I think it was Snowmageddon, because what is it? How are we saying this?
Snowpocalypse?
Snowpocalypse was the one where actually Maryland actually shut down. So there was a state of emergency and you couldn't be on the road. And I remember having to get back from wherever I was, and my husband had to pretend he was going to the hospital in order to be on the road to pick me up. I'm pretty sure it was Snowmageddon.
We'll go with. So thank you, Allie and Joy, for those. All right, so Tracey, how did you start your journey as a romance writer?
A part of me, in the same way that I always read, was always a writer. And I, wrote plays for church. I wrote like bad rhyming poetry, thinking that I was deep. And actually, when I was about 13 or 14, I wrote a romance novel. It was really short, because I only care about the beginning and the end. So it's maybe 3 chapters that I still have. That's really bad. That was typed on a typewriter. Good Lord. And when I was in college, as a way to procrastinate, I would go to my friends and say, okay, like, what boy do you like now? And they would give me a name, and I would go and write these little short story, sort of, love stories based on whichever boy they liked now, and, how I imagined grown-ups interacted or whatever, as a way to sort of not study or do actual work. And so I think I've always wanted to be a writer, but that was just not on the, Jim Howard plan for what his daughter was going to do with her life. So fast forward many years, I continued to read romance, my favorite genre, always. And I had kids, I was married, I had kids at home. They had some medical issues, so I ended up having to leave work to be home. And it was a lot of work to be home. And as a person who always defined herself by her job and her achievements and accomplishments, I knew that it was important work, but nobody was going around saying, oh, great job on this mothering thing, or, you were mother of the month this month. Like, nobody was giving me that external sort of affirmation, although I knew what I was doing was important. So it was like, okay, as soon as my youngest starts full day kindergarten, I've got to figure out something to do. And I actually don't know what it was that made me think I could try romance writing full time, but I just said, this is what I'm going to do. I talked to my husband, because I was like, look, you married a lawyer, so I fully understand if you're like, okay, get back to it. But I really wanted to try to do it. And he was so supportive. He was like, absolutely, if this is what you want to do, you go after it. And I did, like most of us, I started my research and, seeing how this was supposed to happen. And I never looked back and never sort of regretted that decision.
That's awesome. So both of you currently write contemporary romance. Any thoughts? Have you ever thought about like writing outside that genre? Still within romance, but maybe a different subgenre?
Before I wrote contemporary, the first thing I actually started to write that I thought I was going to do was paranormal. And because it was hot at the time that I came, like once my first Romance Writers of America meeting, a chapter meeting, which was Virginia Romance Writers, paranormal was hot. Everybody was talking about paranormal. I am married to a guy who is a comic book geek. And so despite my best efforts, I knew a lot of stuff in that realm. And so I thought, okay, like maybe I could write this. And I wrote a paranormal, again, which will probably never see the light of day. But I think contemporary is sort of where my voice is. I wish I had the voice for historical because I think I have some good ideas, but I don't have that voice. I would have them saying all sorts of words that's not right. And it's just a whole bunch of stuff I would probably do. So it's probably best that I stay contemporary.
Yeah. Although Joy says paranormal, let that flag fly. Joy.
Maybe. You never know. I don't know. Right. Maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Always possibility. What about you, Mia? Any thoughts ever writing outside of contemporary?
So outside of contemporary, no. I've never really sort of been inclined to, I like to read outside of contemporary, but I too feel like my voice fits in contemporary. But I would say if there were anywhere that I would go, it would be YA. I sort of sometimes very much fancy myself in that space. And I kind of feel like if I'm going to do it, I'm going to have to do it like in the next like 5 years or so while my girls are still here and can go, no, that's not how you do it. That's not how you say it. And so they can correct me on all of that stuff. But that's where, I mean, I think like a YA contemporary rom-com would be a lot of fun to write.
Probably. I see a lot of YA authors like venturing into adult romance. So you could easily, we can swap out. So it's all good.
Staying in romance though.
That's good. That's good. Firmly romance. That's what we like to hear. Exactly. All right. So now tell us a little bit about your most recent releases.
Okay.
So want to go for, because your book comes out next week.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
You go first.
I know.
August 25th. Buy it now.
Yes. So my latest release, here I go, author. Where is it? There we go. Is Like Lovers Do. It comes out Tuesday, August 25th. It is the second book in my Girls Trip series, and that series is based on 4 friends who met their first year of college and became lifelong friends, and they go on vacation together every year. And that is based on sort of my own real life friendship with women that I met our first year of college. And every year we have gone on vacation together. I have been saying the past 21 years, and one of them texted me the other day to say, no, it's 25. And I was like, thank you. So yeah, for 25 years, we've been going away every year except this year. But Like Lovers Do is a friends to lovers fake relationship book. Nick, who is the friend in the group, is a surgeon. She is very sort of determined and driven. She worked really hard to get to where she is because she didn't come from means at all. So becoming a doctor means a lot to her. And for her, because she feels like her mother sacrificed for her to be able to achieve this goal. Becoming a doctor to Nick means being able to take care of her mom in the way that she thinks that she should be taken care of. And so she is on her way. She has this prestigious fellowship lined up, and people who generally get that fellowship tend to pick whatever job they want and be set. They become sort of like foremost, like experts, like sought after in their field. And so one day her fellowship is threatened by a donor's son. It's an intern that was under her that she reprimanded. And so in his, he goes running to daddy, and daddy goes running to her boss. And suddenly her fellowship is in danger. And so she is rightfully upset. And she tells one of her best friends, Ben, who she also happens to live with. He's kind of like her landlord. And Ben is he's an alpha, but he's sweet and caring and sensitive and giving. I love Ben. And Ben's comes from a medical dynasty, pretty much. His family is royalty in medicine, but he sort of is the black sheep. He went into another business. And so Ben's friends are actually getting together, and his ex-girlfriend is trying to sort of get back into his good graces because Ben's business is doing well. And so when she tells Ben about her issues with the fellowship, he says, well, I can talk to my parents to put in a good word for you. And that will pretty much be it, because like I said, his family is well known. But Nick doesn't like to be beholden to anyone, even her friends. So she says, okay, if you do that, then I will go with you to Martha's Vineyard, where your friends are getting together for the week. And I will pretend to be your girlfriend so that your ex-girlfriend doesn't think she has a chance. And so they go to Martha's Vineyard for a week as friends. And shenanigans happen. Shenanigans happen in the backyard. They happen in a hammock. Lots of good stuff goes on. So
yeah,
like lovers there.
Yeah, and I think there's like a short period of like there's one bed, and are they going to share it? Are they not going to? What are they going to do? And it was just like, yeah, let's share the bed.
Well, Nick's like, look, we're grown people. Let's not play this. We can share a bed. It's a big bed. We're fine. And then, the next morning, they're all snuggled, and she gets a little offended. And he's like, wait a minute, this wasn't on me. This was you. So,
right.
But anyway.
Yes. And Melinda says sex hammock. So,
yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Yes, Melinda. Thank you for reminding us about that.
I'd love to just share one thing about this book, because I read this book early. And the backstory is just before I joined RWA, I read Tracey's first book. And I didn't know her then. But I remember thinking very clearly, I want to be doing what this author is doing. And now, fast forward how many years, Tracey and I probably talk every single day. Even though we say, we're going to talk like 2 days from now, we end up talking anyway. And so to see sort of just personally for me, the evolution, having read this book, like this is one of those things where there's no question that I am in part biased, but just taking a step back as a romance writer and reader, like if I were to point to a book and say, if you want to know how to write like a layered romance with character development and really like a romance that shines at kind of showing the author or the character's motivations, why they are the way they are and why they do what they do, read this book. I mean, it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. But yeah.
I told you I was going to embarrass you.
I know his words mean a lot to me, so thank you.
Aw.
Sorry, don't just
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. All right. So Mia, tell us a little bit about The Worst Best Man that was out in January, correct?
February.
February. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So The Worst Best Man is the story of Carolina Santos, who is an Afro-Brazilian wedding planner in the Washington, D.C. area. Sort of this badass. That's how I think of her. She knows what she wants, and she knows how she's going to get it. And she has a plan, and that plan is she's going to basically protect herself from all of the things that make her fearful of putting herself out there. And she is going to get married, except that the person she's going to marry decides he's not going to marry her. And he has his younger brother tell her on the day of the wedding. And in the text that she reads from the fiance to the younger brother, it's clear that the younger brother played some role in his decision not to marry Carolina. So she's pissed, but she moves on. Why? Because she's a badass. So fast forward 3 years later, and she learns that the place where she does her business is likely to close. And so she's kind of feeling nervous about what her next steps are going to be. And she finds herself in this situation where she has this great opportunity to interview for a position as a wedding coordinator at a boutique hotel. And it turns out, though, that it's an interview process where she has to show her marketing and what she perceives as her role and how she would change the branding for the hotel. And she has to work with a marketing team. And that marketing team ends up to be her ex-fiance and the younger brother. She chooses what she perceives to be the lesser of two evils, Max Hartley. And she then engages in a little good-natured pettiness against him. But in the course of the story, they fall in love. And that's not a spoiler, obviously, because it's a romance.
And her pettiness was like, for me as a reader, just enough where it wasn't like too antagonistic, but enough for her to be like, I'm mad about this and I'm gonna not just get over it really quickly, but I'm also not gonna be horrible about it.
Right. And that was important to me. So my litmus test, so Anna Koki has been like my beta reader for, I think, like the last 5 books that I've written. And she was my litmus test. Like if she said that I hadn't gone too far, I was like, okay, it's okay. And I was totally aware of that line when I was writing, and I was hoping that I was always staying on the right side of that line so that people always knew that at her core, she was a good person, and that at his core, he was a good person, and you wanted to see them together, but boy, they were going to go through some stuff before they got there. And so that was the goal. The goal was to have a little fun, but to make sure that it wasn't mean-spirited or made the reader question whether or not their romance made sense.
Right. I think you did a good job for that. So one of my questions, and you guys talked about your own personal friendship, which was so nice to see, but also I feel like in these 2 books and then all the books of both of yours that I've read, there's always a theme of strong female friendship. And for you, like as writers and as women, like why do you feel so compelled to include that? Because a lot of books don't.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. You talk about it.
Well, okay. So for me, I think it's because I've just been surrounded by amazing women throughout my life. And so I think it's kind of putting my experiences on the page. I think it's true. We see women as competitors in popular culture, and I don't view that as my life. I don't see that as how I'm supposed to interact with women. I've never perceived it that way. So it comes naturally to me, I think, to write these friendships in my books. That's what I want to see. It's, in fact, also, I was cognizant of that for male friendships. I just think I wanted to put out what I want to see and what I want to experience and what I have experienced. And, particularly for me, I mean, I grew up with a lot of female cousins who were also really, really good friends. And one of my cousins is one of my best friends. And so, that just feels right. And because I have so much family in my books, having those friendships, whether they're, friends that you're related to or not, it feels right. It feels like that's what you need to surround your characters with in order for them to feel whole and, to feel like they have a life beyond the person that they're ultimately going to be with in the story.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree. I'm surrounded by strong women, and some of the, I guess you call it criticisms or whatever, or things people have said about my books is that the women aren't realistic, or would they really be doing that, and my answer is yes. Like, I'm not writing anything that I haven't experienced, that I don't know. I mean, part of the great thing about the Girls Trip series is to be able to say, these are phenomenal women. These are like Fortune 100 doctors, business, like these are the women that I write that people say aren't real. They are real because they are in, my life. Like Mia, like she is in my life, and she is phenomenal and fabulous. And so I want to write these friendships. And the other part of that is, my husband, God, I mean, he literally is my best friend, and he works from home. So we spend a lot of time together. But it's important for me to be able to have other people that I can turn to. Like, I have no doubt, about his supportiveness and all of that sort of stuff. But I think, is important to me as a woman, and it's just to make you a well-rounded person, that there are other people that you can, that you can talk to, that your life isn't just centered around this one thing, which is wonderful, but that you have other things in your life. And so I just want the positive representation of women and strong women of color. That's really important. And so that's why I write what I write and the way I write it.
That's awesome, because I mean, in my opinion, I think that we just don't see enough representation in media of strong, smart women who aren't in competition with other women. They're here to lift each other up. And I think a lot of people sometimes will talk about romance not being realistic, which is not true. And everybody knows it's fiction. But I think it also...
Telling on yourselves when you say that.
Yeah, exactly. But I think in the sense that when people look at these fictionalized versions of media and they think, well, I want to have a strong, healthy, romantic relationship, I think it also helps people say, I want to have a strong, healthy, non-romantic relationship with other women and these things. So that's one of the reasons why I like to see these types of portrayals of women and even the male friendships but men get a lot of attention. So
it's the kind of attention. So what I tried to do in The Worst Best Man is have a relationship that doesn't look like the typical male relationship, right? Where the men actually talk about their feelings, and I mean, they find themselves in a bed and nobody's like, right. Oh my gosh, I'm going to die. It's just, it's just men being what I think they can be if society didn't tell them they had to be a particular way.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So just a couple more questions before we open it up to the commenters. But you guys kind of touched on this. And then Tracey, I think she touched on this about her personal relationship with her husband. But I think both of you also really write men who see these heroines, right? Like, And Tracey talked about her Ben being like an alpha, but not really. But he is, but also he sees her and like he helps feed her and care for herself not because he believes she can't, like he knows she can, but because she needs that. She doesn't need it, but she does.
Yeah. Like she can take care of herself, but she needs someone to do that. And part of what I was looking for is I knew who Nick was. The moment I wrote the first book, Sweet Talking Lover, and I was plotting out all the friends, I knew who Nick was. I knew that she was going to be strong, and I knew the type of man she would need. And I think ordinarily the instinct, I'm getting a little teary, excuse me. The instinct is to maybe make him a bit more beta or have him sort of not be as strong as she is. But when I was writing this book, and I talk about this in the acknowledgments, I was going through some personal things with my family, with my daughter. And oh my Lord, I can't believe I'm doing this. And I had to I was super mom in a way. Like there was a lot that I had to do. And my husband just, I don't want to say step up as if he doesn't always do those things, but he was a strong partner for me. And this is while he is still being the alpha male that he is. And so when I was thinking about Ben, I thought I wanted a man who was strong, who had his own life, who was successful in his own way, but who could take care of her, not because she needed it, because he wanted to. He wanted to be that support for her so that she didn't have to not be who she was. She's not going to stop being a doctor. She's not going to stop being the type of doctor she wants to be. She's probably not going to be that mom that's going to be at all the events, but that's okay because he'll be there. And I'm sorry I got so teary-eyed about that. But,
okay, so I should fully disclose that I have because of allergies, not because so for me, and particularly with The Worst Best Man, because some of the issues in Lena's backstory felt very, like, I think this is the first book where the backstory really felt and resonated with me because I had experienced it. And I think that's the reason why this book has resonated with so many people as well. But when I write, I rely on Romancing the Beat in part, written by Gwen Hayes, who's absolutely fabulous. And one of the things that she talks about is that the journey is from wholehearted, HOLE, to wholehearted, WHOLE. And so you want to see the character kind of go from the wholehearted to wholehearted. And one of the things that I was thinking about in this book was that journey is different in my view and in my experience for women of color. And it is specifically because that shield that people put up that stops them from falling in love, from being in love, thinking they deserve love, all of that stuff that Gwen Hayes talks about, that never really goes away for women of color. It is how we often have to navigate the world. And for Carolina, what I wanted to show was that this woman was going to have to figure out a way to become wholehearted and yet continue to protect herself given the realities of the world. Mm-hmm. And so doing that for me is finding that safe space, finding that place where you can be absolutely who you are with a person you trust and who will have your back no matter what. And that is, precisely when I think about what that looks like, I absolutely rely on my husband for that. He is that person who knows me inside out, knows the way that I am, knows that I do not always have a smile on my face, that I need a hug sometimes, that I'm very strong. And yes, I can like hold a lot of things in, but he is the person that knows, I know you're hurting. What can I do to help? And I think everybody needs that, and everybody needs that to different degrees. And what I wanted to show in this book was sort of how that experience happens for someone who is very much like myself, an Afro-Latino who is trying to navigate this world that doesn't always feel safe for them.
Sure. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. And Robin wants to know, where are we finding these husbands? I would also like to know.
So Tracy's younger in law school.
What was that?
So Tracy's younger in law school.
Girl, I had to grow. We grew together.
Yes.
He didn't start out that way. He didn't start out that way.
In college, my first year of college. So he too had a lot of growing to do. We grew together.
Awesome.
And so there were ups and downs, but we got to that point where I was like, "Ooh, you are in just the right for me."
So what I'm hearing is that I need to go back to school. Robin, I'm not sure about you or Priscilla or Norma, but maybe we could like talk about this offline and figure something out for us. So, okay, just before we open it up, I want to know what book. So, because everybody always loves to know what you like, what you've read and you've loved. So either something that a couple of books that you read and loved, or something that you're really excited about coming up.
So I have been talking about this book since Bookstore Romance Day for all the panels I've been on. Pen tip, yes, dating makes perfect. That's right. Yes. I'm going to make sure I got the title right. Yes.
Oh, dating makes perfect.
You couldn't stop talking about it. I was like, "All right, I'll buy it." I was going to buy it anyway. My girl, love her. So
yeah, it is so. I can't say enough wonderful things about that book. I really, really enjoyed it, and I think I've talked a lot about the things I like about it, but I think the main thing that I like and appreciate about that book is that she immersed you into Thai culture. Like, you are there in her family, and she's not explaining, like, it's not like for like, dumbing it down. She's like, this is what I'm writing. She immerses you in Thai culture, and you're also being a part of this universal experience of falling in love for the first time. And so what she does is, and I don't think you finished the book thinking this, but it's a way of showing how alike we all are. All these things that people try to use to divide us, to say that we're different. What she does in this book is show you how we are all the same. We all have these universal experiences, and that it may look a little different because of you're in this culture or this culture, but we're all the same. It's so beautifully done, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Mia?
I came prepared.
Clearly.
Yes. Probably not a surprise to many people, but and this actually, I have not like even read this. This is like the one that I had to go to Target to get, because I was like, I absolutely need it. But I had what's that?
I said you braved COVID.
I moved everything on the shelf. I changed stickers. This is probably not. I was doing all kinds of things with the display. I was like, hey, I'm working at Target today. But this book is just so much fun, and it is kind of everything that I would have loved to have read when I was 16 years old and reading romance. I read books that were completely white worlds that I didn't know and didn't understand, but it still consumed me. But my goodness, like having this, sort of representation on the page, and then a beautiful story, and then Alexis just writes really beautifully, like really easily. And I just feel like these characters, even though they're larger than life, they're really relatable. So I really enjoy that. I could talk about other books, but we'd probably be here forever.
We'll open up to questions, and then if we have any more time, we will get more recs from you, Mia. But also, I finished You Had Me at Ola last week, and it's fantastic. It's just so good. All right, so let me scroll back. Linda Watson asked if you are a plotter or planner. And Tracey, she said, did you know who was going to be next for each book?
Well, first, I am a plotter in the sense that before I start writing, I know like my character arcs, like Mia talked about earlier, sort of the arc of your character. I know what that is for both characters before I start writing, and I have a good idea of what the plot is going to be, and the main things that are going to happen. But the other stuff I sort of discover as I do my first draft. And then I did have an idea about the order of the books. I knew that I was going to do Nick second, like Kayla was first. That's the idea I came up with. And I knew I wanted to write Nick second. And I knew I wanted Ava's to be fourth. So that kind of left Lacey as three. But that sounds bad, but as if I'm not excited about Lacey. I'm very excited about Lacey. But I knew sort of based on who the character was and what type of story I wanted to write for them that they had to fall in a certain way. So, yeah.
What about you, Mia? Are you a planner, plotter?
So I call myself a plantster. So I do a little bit of plotting at the beginning, like Tracey. I try and figure out kind of like, who are these people? I really try and figure out backstory, like what is it that is holding them back? And then I try and figure out pivotal moments. Kind of what are the things that are going to get the reader to fall in love with these characters, or to really understand them. So when I started writing The Worst Best Man, I knew that I wanted, as an example, I knew that I wanted Max to have this kind of moment in front of Lena's family where he basically said, like, my brother wasn't the right person for her. And even though he wasn't ready to admit at that point that he was the right person for her, everybody else could see it. And I wanted the reader to be like, oh, this is going where I want it to go, that kind of thing. So I have a sense of that. And usually I have a sense of what the Black moment is going to look like so that I know what I'm working towards. But then everything else is kind of, let's just see what happens.
That's what also, she comes up with like, she is like the best at like coming up with like amazing concepts and then having like the best title to go with it. Like it should be a business. Like we should do business. No, but she does. And then the other stuff like comes because she already has this like rich, like The Worst Best Man. Come on. I mean, don't even get me started. Not that it wrote itself. I'm not saying that she's talented. It did not. What I'm saying is she has this rich, that title and concept gives her this rich playground to play in. And it can go off the rails, but in talented hands, it stays where it's supposed to be. And it gives you it delivers on the promise of the title and the cover, It lives on the promise. I messed up the words. You know what I'm saying?
All right. So Robin asks, do you think about what characters from previous books are up to now, or does their story end for you at the end of their book?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, certain characters, and to me, I think that's telling. It means that that's kind of the book that that really spoke to me for whatever reason. I know I have definitely thought about Tori and Carter from Acting on Impulse, just because I feel like they were the cutest. I like they're just an adorable couple, and I kind of at some point I really felt like they existed, and so in my mind it's very easy to think of them somewhere out in the world, kind of living their life together. And then there are some characters. I mean, I love all of my characters, but I think it's the books where I have something that really is meaningful to me in a really important way. Like for Acting on Impulse, there was this sort of subplot about family and food and how we show our love and how that's tied up with culture. And I think because of that, those characters kind of just stayed with me, even though it's, I mean, gosh, it's been 3 years now. So, but I do think about them.
I think about them, but like not enough where I have to write because writing is hard. So I don't write. And I think the one I think about the most is Adam from Love on My Mind. And I think about him every year that Apple does their presentations because, and you know, and I know his company is not real. I know this. But I always think like, oh, well, he's probably having his presentation now. And I'm sure he's great at this point, you know. In my head, he's like, I think about him every year. Yeah, I just think like he's doing his presentation and the company's doing well. And I've tried to like, you know, like Sarah McLean, her books happen in this world and there will be like characters from other books who will appear in other series. And so I tried to do that with like the Computronics and sort of like weave that in. And my editor is just like, zip, nope.
Nope.
So I was like, okay, I guess this isn't a joint universe.
So Robin says that Adam was the character that made her ask that question. So, I have one question from Joy, but I'm going to say this from Norma first. So Norma says, you two supporting each other and talking each other up is literally everything. So I agree with that. And so that's been wonderful as part of this. So I have one question from Joy before we close this out. And Joy wants to know if you ever want to write a balls to the wall romance under another pen name. Only Joy would ask that. Oh,
I have been, I don't have the time to do it. I really don't. But I have thought about a couple of stories that I would do, and I would have to do them under a pen name because they would be way sexier. It would probably be, there would be more erotica romance. Yeah.
I was gonna say because like lovers do had
I
some.
do. Yeah. This, but this would be not only sort of the scenes, but like involvements, numbers involved, things.
Okay.
Involved. Yeah.
Okay. So Joy will be looking for more information from you on that. You know how to find her.
That's hilarious. I would say, I think if there were anything that I would do under a different pen name, it would be something that was completely like, I love angst. I really do. I don't know if I would do well writing it, but books like that really do, like, I just kind of, that's the kind of stuff that I read before I go to bed. And, you know, it kind of feels like, oh, you know, but it's not funny, flirty, a little dirty. So it doesn't fit with my brand, but maybe I could do it under a pen name. It would be something that was like dirty. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We do have just like a couple more moments left, but so just tell us what you're working on next.
Mia?
I am working on Dean's story. So Max's best friend and the worst best man. The book is tentatively titled The Wedding Crasher. I am working on it now. And let's see, I think I can pull this pic of my inspiration. Oh, sorry. Here we go. These are like the notes. And I have all kinds of information, but I'm not going to give it to you. So that's enough of a tease.
So do you know approximately when we'll have that story?
I think that one is, it's definitely 2021, and I think it might be May. So we've got some time.
Okay. Sorry, Tracey.
No. It's important. It's important. Yeah. I am working on a couple of things. So there's book 3 of The Girls Trip, which is Lacey's story. So there's that. And then I am working on something else that I can't talk about right now.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. All right. So I think we're about ready to wrap it up. And just a reminder to anybody watching, check out the One More Page bookstore. There links. You can purchase books from them. Both of Tracey and Mia's books are available, plus all sorts of other books. I'm sure they have Pin Tips book, which Eileen put in the chat. So that was, say it again one more time, Tracey. Or Dating Makes Perfect, right?
Perfect. Yes.
Right. And then Mia recommended You Had Me at Ola by Alexis Daria. And so that's about it. So thank you both so much. And thank you to One More Page.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you, Kina. This was amazing. Yeah. So much fun. You were excellent. So as usual.
I'm sorry I made you cry, but also I'm not sorry.
I blame you. Started. You opened the words, and then it was hard to close them back. So it wasn't.
No, I know. It happened. So anyway, and thank you for everybody who watched. And
thank you for coming.
Sorry, just quickly, one last thing. Tell everybody your handle for your social media that you use the most.
I'm definitely on Twitter the most, so that's at Mia Sosa Romance.
Yeah, and me too. It's at T Livesay, so the letter T in my last name.
Okay, perfect. So if you're not already following these ladies, go ahead and give them a follow. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you all for watching and for joining us.
Everybody. All right. Bye.
Bye.